Well, thank you all for coming out today on what is a very busy pre-holiday season, but Oklahoma truly has quite a bit to be thankful for. And one of those things is that I would like to announce the reinstatement of the waiver from the requirements of No Child Left Behind, effective immediately. We received today word from the U.S. Department of Education that the waiver had been reinstated for the 2014-2015 school term. And so the work in the department now at returning to the flexibility that was provided through the waiver and our direct work with school districts can now be reinstated, if it will. We're very excited about this. We know that this will provide a little bit more stability and predictability for districts. But the good news for districts is it reinstates the flexibility they had on how they administer their federal dollars and on the options that they provide their students in working with their students. We are grateful to the U.S. Department of Education for reinstating this waiver. As you know, in October, the Regions for Higher Education found that the pass standards were college and career ready. That allowed us to continue our discussion with them, which had stopped when the waiver was pulled away. During those discussions at renewing the waiver, they were very impressed with the work that we were doing around school turnaround and the very impressive gains that many of these districts were making, as measured in reading, math, and graduation rates. We call that systems change. And I've asked Mr. Richard Karam here to have a brief statement about the work we're doing. That was really what they were focused on. Once we got the component of the standards being approved, they were then very interested in allowing us an opportunity to continue forward on our school improvement efforts. In combination with the work that Mr. Karam and our school turnaround team were doing, Ms. Ramona Coates was able to also add the added component of the new requirements for audit of schools around their title programs. And that focuses more on performance of the school and the work they're doing in the school rather than checking boxes. So I'm going to ask Mr. Karam to come up and talk to you a little bit about school turnaround and the work that he's done that really was the heart of what helped us get the waiver reinstated with those schools. Mr. Karam.
Again, my name's Richard Karam, and as the superintendent said, we may have lost our waiver in August, but we didn't miss a beat as we were helping schools. This is about the hard and difficult work of turning around schools. We help them implement, along with vendors, outside vendors, we help them implement systems change, a system of looking at data and looking at it in a purposeful way to drive and change instruction down to singular students, groups of students, and the school as a whole. Our whole focus is to bring the data, that rich data about students and the accomplishments and student performance that can happen when we do implement those systems of looking at data. We help them drive change with changing their culture. We work very hard at, with students and teachers and parents in helping them see the possibility of students, finding inside the student who is that student going to become. It's our job as teachers to make those little ones into tall ones and to provide back to the economy. We provide systems to change instruction. We work with schools hunting for vendors that they can work with to help their teachers improve how they deliver instruction in the classroom. The teachers work very, very hard. The world is changing very quickly. You know that technology moves at a rapid pace, and teachers are trying to keep up. It is difficult. School is a whole lot different than it was when I was in school. We had a piece of chalk. Now we have these things and these things, and teachers are working really hard to keep up with what's going on. Change is difficult, but we work with leaders in helping those folks become instructional leaders instead of just managers of a school. We change the way they think about instruction, the way they approach their teachers about instruction, the way they approach parents, then the community and other stakeholders. There's a real systematic approach in the way they approach these folks. So that's a lot of the work that we're doing. I think one of the important parts about this is the Title I dollars that are specifically targeted to improve reading for young people and improve math for young people. If we could tackle those two and raise the student performance in this state, there'd be no stopping what we do with the economy in this state. Ramona, would you like to come up and talk about Title I and how we?
Thank you, Richard.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Again, my name is Ramona Coates, and I've been working over the past few years intensely with the Federal Programs Department, also with Mr. Richard Karam and his team in the School Turnaround Office. Our vision at this agency has been to not only implement effective reform strategies, but also to ensure that everything that we do undergirds and supports not only all children, but the individual child as well. So what we did was to take an intense look at all federal funds that run through this building. And of course, the largest pot of federal funds are those K-12 Title I dollars. Over the years and historically, those dollars simply were tied to federal programs requirements at the national level. For every dollar, a string was attached. I'm not so sure that a child was attached, but a federal law, a federal requirement was attached to those dollars. And we determined to move the compliance issue from strong emphasis upon compliance to emphasis on performance-based results. In other words, how were those federal dollars supporting and undergirding every child in a building? So we changed our monitoring processes not only from a monitoring checklist, but to an actual come to the table and discuss what we're doing at each and every site in behalf of each and every child, in consistently reviewing data, in consistently requesting that teachers come together, school counselors, school assessment personnel, building principals, and every person involved in a child's life that could sit at the table in behalf of that child to ensure that that child was going to succeed. And you might say, gee, that's a lot of difference from compliance. It certainly is, and believe you me, it made me come alive on the inside. So the compliance issue, Richard, it's still there, and it probably always will be to a certain degree. But we're learning and growing about what it's going to take to ensure that children's lives are ready and prepared for college and career. Thank you.
Both of these folks are being modest, and very soon we'll be able to share with the state more extensively the gains that have been made in our schools. But for instance, we have schools that are priority schools These are the lowest 5% of performing schools in our state, as reported out on the A through F grade card, that have made between 20 and 58 points of improvement in just 1 year. Many of these schools are moving now. If you've improved a grade, a letter grade on the grade card, you're moved off the priority list. And we even had one school that went from the priority list to being a reward school in just 1 year. And so we have that information. Mr. Karen presented that to the state board last Wednesday, and it just shows you, it's emblematic of the amount of work that's been going on in the state. So with that, we'll pull this open and see if you have any questions regarding today's statement.
Superintendent Brucey, it was my understanding that should the feds reinstate No Child Left Behind's waiver, it wouldn't be until the 2015-2016.
Yeah.
So can you explain why it got moved up?
Well, that's a great question. Originally, they were telling us that this would be in what they call the spring cohort. And with those deadlines being somewhere around March or April, I haven't gotten to read the guidance yet. What we did, though, is we went back with them and we visited them and said, with all of the pieces of the puzzle together now, meaning the standards, we said we would like to begin again the discussion that we left off with in August and to see what we could do about reinstating the waiver. Didn't really know if it was possible, but we decided to go ahead and try to see what we could do for this year. And the discussions went forward. As we were able to show them the work that we were doing in school turnarounds and in our Title I work, they were very impressed with it. And they were confident in the reforms. They were complimentary about all of the work we're doing, particularly the results. And they decided then to go ahead and reinstate it this year so there wouldn't be an interruption in the work. They realized that the work had to go forward. They realized the positive nature of the work, and they wanted to make sure that this was reinstated so we could go ahead and continue that work and then report out results in line with the waiver. This also means that districts that normally had, this year we're having to put aside, some of them 10% of their federal dollars, now can go back to the way that they were distributing their dollars under the waiver. A lot more flexibility for districts. That 20% set aside that you were hearing about no longer will occur. And the growing of state government is not now going to happen. We can do it in a much more targeted way. Now, the renewal of the waiver is an entirely different process. Guidelines for that just came down last week. Unfortunately, we haven't had a chance to look at that. We've just been focused on this. And so we'll be looking at the renewal application for the waiver and all of those guidelines and get some information to you later. But that will be for the spring cohort that they talked about in March and April. And of course, we'll work on the transition team with Superintendent-elect Hoffmeister and be sure that we provide her and her transition team all the information around that so the state can continue forward for a multi-year renewal process.
And what's the status of development of the new standards?
I don't have any specific information about that because that is with the State Board of Education. And so I believe they've had some meetings and there was discussion around hiring an executive director. So you're going to have to get with them about that. Yes? Well, there was never funding lost, and I think that's an important point to make. It was just simply how districts could spend the dollar bills. They had, under loss of the waiver, going back to the requirements of No Child Left Behind, it was very prescriptive on how they spent their dollars. They lost their flexibility to make decisions at their sites. And so and then it also meant that we were going to have to grow government here to do all this auditing and all this compliance review that Ms. Coates has just told you really was to no benefit. And so districts now have those dollar bills that they no longer have to set aside for supplemental services or for transporting children to a school of choice. Under the NCLB NCLB requirements, most of our school sites were declared as needing improvement or in some level. There was really no schools to go to that were better performing under the federal requirements. So they were going to have to put aside dollars to take those children to those schools where some of them would be about 150 to 200 miles away. So it would have meant that money would have been tied up for the whole year. This now releases that. It takes away the 13 different requirements and constrictions, and it now allows districts to make appropriate decisions that is right for their kids in their districts.
I think you kind of did just break it down, but if you're a parent at home, how would you explain this? What does this mean for the average child in a classroom?
What this means for children in the classroom is that now if the district wants to be able to hire certain individuals to assist with reading or to assist with mathematics, they now have the flexibility to do that. They don't have to go through a lengthy process to make sure it fits within each requirement. So the strings, the requirements are still there, but the flexibility is there, and it provides districts the decision to administer the programs they think is appropriate at their school site.
The key word here really is flexibility.
Absolutely, yes.
And we're talking about only Title I dollars? Here, is that the decision?
Yes, the flexibility and the expense of the title dollars. And then it also, though, opens up for us the ability to work with not 1,700 sites, but now those school districts that are lowest performing. That allows us to target our work and provide the systematic systems change approach that we're clearly seeing some positive results from. We were anticipating, under the requirements of No Child Left Behind, trying to figure out a way we were going to work with 1,700 sites. And the only thing we could answer is that we were going to have to grow government and hire a ton of people and really to do things that we saw absolutely of no benefit to districts. Well, thank you all very much for coming today. It's a good day, and we've got good reason to have a great Thanksgiving. I want to wish all of you a great Thanksgiving as well.